Welcome into the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I have a Josh Yohe with The Athletic here. Josh, how you doing? What are you doing in your summertime off other than shaving your beard?
Well, yeah, I did that, and it's just different doing the show when you're not in Vegas. I don't know if we can match the setting from last week, Corey, but you did well to find that place.
No,
And,
it was a good little spot. I wish the cameras were better because you would have been able to see like the waterfall in the background and everything.
Vegas is never the wrong answer, so it was an enjoy. I think in the future, anytime the Penguins play in Vegas, we have to do the show from there. I think that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So, Joe, are you booked out to March of next year? Because March 7th, the Penguins play in Vegas.
There it is.
You know, it's what day of the week? Because if it's a weekday, I'm sure we can make it happen.
I think it's a Tuesday or no, it's a Friday. I'm sorry, it's a Friday. It's a Friday, I think. I'm sorry.
It's a Friday. Yeah, you know, it's long enough time for my agent to get something going, or just take the week off. Just make money doing the podcast, get the advertising revenue.
Yeah. Well, comedian Joe Bartnick with us here too. Joe, you were up in Boston. Where are you headed next on your before
I'm going back to LA tomorrow, a couple weeks of LA shows, and then off to Texas. But thanks everyone that was in Boston, came to the shows up at Patriots Place in the shadow of Tom Brady land. It was fun times. Josh, you're in Boston a lot. Me and some friends stayed at the Monday night for fun at the Verb Hotel. If you like rock and roll, I can't give it the highest of endorsements. In some of those, nouveau hotels that think they're hip, they kind of get on my nerves. This place was absolutely fantastic. Then I went down and saw my buddy, the great Paul Verzi, on his 4th of July party. I'm one of the main. It's like I surprised him. He was so happy. Him and his wife were the best. Then my dad celebrated 80 2 days ago. Now my mom is 77 today. So I'm in Wildwood doing all the Jersey things. We went fishing today, just having a blast, and back to reality of stand-up Tuesday night back in LA.
Nice. Well, happy birthday to Ange and Big Joe.
Absolutely.
Which, we'll have to get the moms more involved. Both your moms, I think, would be character. I know Josh, you said your mom is a little under, not outgoing. But man, would I love to hear her Pittsburgh sports takes one-on-one.
My mom is very shy, but I guarantee she's in her living room watching the Pirates game right now, complaining about something that they're doing, which is fair. So, I don't blame her.
Well, you guys know I can't stand baseball, but there's a thing called banana ball. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Bananas?
My nephews, we came back from fishing, and it was just on ESPN, and I had to listen to the 12 rules. I'm like, I might be interested in this. And it wasn't inning. It was insane.
Do you know how expensive it is to get a ticket to that? I looked on StubHub. It's like $300 to get in any of those places. Unbelievable. How it's like wildly popular. Yes.
They're crazy. They do backflips and catch the ball in the outfield. Like catch the ball back.
Right.
Oh yeah.
The Pirates should play that way for all the walks they take or give away.
Bob Nutting will institute a rule where anyone in the crowd catches the ball, it's an out. That could certainly go a long way for the Pirates.
He would want the balls back so he could get any pitches. But now people are like, Bartnick, shut up. Let's talk free agency.
But yeah, let's first segment we're going to get into here. I mean, we had NHL free agency. And let me just to tee this up for you guys, looking through the Penguins free agency, Blake Lizotte, 2 years, 3.7. Matt Grzelcyk, 1 year, 2.7. Anthony Beauvillier, 1 year, 1.1. Emil Benstrom, 1 year, $775K. Sebastian, not that Aho, the other Aho, 2 years, $1.5 million. So to me, I hear a lot of 1 year, 2 year, 1 year, 2 year. What does that say about where this franchise is going?
Well, listen, Kyle Dubas, I guess he was a man of his word, because the night of day one of the draft last Friday, he came right out and said, I'm not giving anyone long-term deals in free agency. We're looking for some bargains, some one-year deals. That's exactly what he did. It kind of feels like, I don't want to use the word rebuild, because I don't think that's exactly what they're doing. but I think they're in a holding pattern basically until some of these prospects are finally ready. I think Kyle has made the decision. I'm not trading first round picks. I'm not trading prospects. In fact, we're going to try to acquire all of these things, and we'll try for to keep the team competitive. It's not like they're looking for a top 5 pick next season. And I know this is a philosophy that is not very exciting for the fan base, and I get it. I understand why some people are a little disappointed, but I think there is a lot of logic to it, Joe. I mean, I do think it's time to try to develop some young players here.
Yeah, it's time. I mean, they were not going to free agency their way into being a Stanley Cup, contending team.
Right.
But as I told my nephews on the fishing boat, we're a lot closer to being awful than we are to being pretty good. And we can get into what everybody else on the Eastern Conference did, which I think a lot of teams got better or at least held serve when I thought maybe some would decline. Grizzlick for 275, definitely an upgrade over POJ.
I think so too.
He had maybe an off year last year, but I've always enjoyed his style of hockey. Could I have seen him throw maybe 4 at somebody better, maybe a little edge? I probably would have liked to see that more. I was a Anthony Beauvillier fan, 4 years ago on the island. I don't know. He's in the missing persons bureau. I don't know if that's any good. Aho, that's not that Aho. Lazat, I've seen play. He's never jumped out at me because I've seen paying a little bit more money for somebody I like more than Lazat. Yeah, that's what it came down to. I saw a lot of guys getting like meager money. That like, well, why didn't we just get that guy?
No, I think there's something to that. I don't think they did anything offensively bad. It's not like you looked at any of these contracts. Oh no, that's no good. There are some interesting things with this team right now, though. They have way too many 4th line centers. They have like 4 4th line centers. Lazat's a guy, like, he's okay. I mean, he's an okay 4th line center. He is what he is. Nothing spectacular, but he's fine. But you could say that about so many guys now. And you've got Hayes here now, and you've still got Eller. Maybe they're 3rd line centers, maybe they're 4th line centers. But the point is, and with Olivier too, you have an abundance of guys who can play that bottom 6 center role, which makes me wonder if those guys are all going to be here. Certainly come March, if even before then, I wouldn't be shocked. You're going to see Kyle make some moves. He's made it clear he wants to add as many draft picks as he can. He's already added a couple, which I think is a good thing. Listen, if somebody said, hey, I'll give you a 2nd or 3rd round pick for Lars Eller, as much as I like Eller, you have to think about it because you can adequately replace him now. So you have some moves like that you can make. And I agree with what you said, Joe. 1 or 2 free agent moves, if they would have made a splash, doesn't make them a Stanley Cup team. I like Vlad Tarasenko, even though he's not what he was. And I know for a fact they made him an offer and they were interested in him. But he's not going to turn them into, one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the East. That's just the way it is. So I think what we're seeing now is Kyle Dubas essentially playing the long game. And he said it before. He basically said, I don't want to sneak in and be the 8th team into the playoffs. I want to build us up so that we're a contender year in and year out. And he said, I don't know how long it's going to take. It might take a year. Might take less than that. Might take longer than that. But that's the goal. And I think for a franchise that has always gauged itself by how many Stanley Cups it's won, I think that's an understandable approach and probably the right one. The only problem is you still have Sidney Crosby, at the end of his career, but he is still great and he has 1 year left on his deal and you got to get him a contract and make him happy. And you still want to have a contender when he's here. And that's the tricky thing. I really think, Joe, Kyle would tear this thing completely down if Sid wasn't here. I really believe that.
Well,
but his presence changes things.
Well, I mean, exactly. And he would have to tear it down because without Sid, they were completely a lottery team.
Right.
He wouldn't even be tearing anything. There's nothing to tear down. That's already been knocked down. It's already been condemned. I really wish we would have done this podcast Wednesday when I did all my homework for Puck Off when I knew where about 90 players went. And I would love to rattle off about 9 guys I would have taken over, Bolivier and Lazat. I will say this, though. I would have liked the teasing of Vladimir Tarasenko. That hurt me because I tell you, would Tarasenko be the difference between us winning a first round or not? No, but I would have liked to put an extra $1.5 million to the Vlad Tarasenko fund, and maybe not seeing, maybe not having Anthony Bolivia or even Aho here. I think he adds something to Gino's line. He adds to the power play. We're all about stars. The guy has 2 cups. He's Vlad the Impaler. Like, there literally wasn't one damn sexy thing out there. And I'm not saying he has to, make the big bash and, be on the crawl in Sports Center, but it would have been a nice thing for the ticket buyers and the media and me.
Oh, no, absolutely.
To have a little sizzle on that steak, John.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, Penguins fans are used to big names. Tarasenko's a big name. It's just the way it is. And, I know he's got a good relationship with Gino, his fellow countryman. And let's be honest, the Penguins, in my view, they really need a left wing in the top 6. And I like Drew O'Connor a lot. And he did a really commendable job in the last month of the season playing with Sid. He really did. He came into his own. I still like Drew O'Connor on the third line a hell of a lot more than I like him on the first line. And I'm going to guess the captain feels the same, even though I haven't heard that out of his mouth. So they have all kinds of bottom 6 pieces now. I don't know how good any of them are, but they certainly have a lot of options they can mix and match. The top 6, though, with Raquel coming off of a bad year, O'Connor, still not a proven commodity just yet. Those are certainly concerns for me when I look at the Penguins roster. So, yes, there is more quantity, there is more depth, and there's something to be said for that. But it's the same thing we always say. If the big guys get hurt, or if, Gino continues to decline, or if Sid doesn't play at the same level he played at last year, if any of those things happen, Joe, this isn't going to be a great team.
It's not going to be anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I wasn't expecting a miracle, but we if we did have somehow get rid of, you just said his name. I'm spacing Gino's winger. Ricardo. Yeah. We did somehow get rid of him, or get rid of Jari, and then maybe sign a Zadorov and a Tarasenko. Get a real top defenseman and a real goal scorer, or maybe a Dakota Joshua. And if we would have cleared the decks on all the people we wanted to get rid of, and then got like Joshua and Zadorov and maybe one other guy, I think then you're saying, hey, you know what? We may have jumped Washington. We can jump the Islanders. Maybe we are like it, maybe what we thought we were last year.
Right.
We didn't do any of that, and I think we're in decline. I don't think there's any way around.
There's no question, and I would have liked to have seen Dubas get rid of some more people, quite frankly. And I'm not so sure that he didn't want to. I really think, guys, all of the no trade clauses on these contracts for the Penguins, they're making Dubas's job so difficult. A lot of them handed out by Ron Hextall. Raquel has a partial no movement clause. Jari has one. All of these guys do, and it just makes it that much harder to move. Jari in particular is the interesting one. When Nedeljkovic got his new deal, my very first thought was, boy, I wonder if Jari might be on his way out. And I know for a fact Kyle talked with some teams. It was discussed on a very low level, I think. But I don't think there were any takers for Tristan. I think that was the big thing. And I'm very interested in how this plays out with the goalies moving forward. I asked Mike Sullivan point blank right before the draft, is Tristan Jari your number 1 goaltender? He didn't answer the question. He said, we believe Tristan is a starting goalie in the league. And Sully's very good with words, right? He didn't come right out and say it. I still don't think they're happy with him. We could see Ned play a lot more next season. I could see that, but there are so many guys that the Penguins could move, or if they could, I should say, and get something really big in return. But the no movement clauses are what they are. In about 12 months from now, Brian Rust's no movement clause leaves. I know you love him, Joe, and so do I. That's a guy. If he plays at this level again next year, they could get something really big in return if they continue to go in decline. So I think as time goes on, we're going to see guys moved. But I think Dubas's hands were really tied to some extent.
I'll once again make my Rust point. I think you need to keep Rust no matter what. You need a guy that's won cups, that's played with Sid and Gino. So when the era is over, he wears the C and people can bring their kids to say that guy played with Sid and Gino, you have to have a link to that. And he's the guy to say, if it could have been Jake. It's obviously it's not Jake. So now is there smoke to the fire? Was there smoke of Christopher going to Montreal?
I don't think so. I know there was some chatter. I heard some of it in Vegas about Letang being unhappy and wanting to go to Montreal. Anytime there are Chris Letang rumors, Montreal is the city that's going to pop up. Well, we all know he's very proudly French Canadian. He still lives there in the off season. But I can tell you this: prospect camp opened yesterday, and before camp opened at 9 a.m., Chris Letang was with his son on the ice skating beforehand. I don't think Chris would be in Cranberry skating on the Penguins practice rink with his son if he was really unhappy and eager to be moved away. So I know there was some chatter about that, but I don't think that's anything to get too worked up about.
I've never heard unhappy next to Letang's name ever.
No, I mean, he didn't have to resign here 2 years ago. He made that choice, and Gino made that choice. And I think they all knew, this team was going to decline at some point. But Sid and Gino and Chris, those three guys are so loyal to one another and to the Penguins. They're such close friends off of the rink. They just want to play together. I really have always believed that, and I still do. So I know the chatter was out there, and I don't doubt that Letang and Crosby and Malkin might be looking at this roster and say, oh, God, we got some problems. But part of it's on them, right? I mean, they wanted to stay, and they're getting paid a certain amount of money, and that's just the way it is. So I don't think.
When I hear that, and it's the truth, they wanted to stay. I don't think they held this team ransom. I mean, I think,
No.
I think Gino's deal's very fair. I think Letang's deal's pretty fair, especially if he played like he did 3/4 of the season. And Sid's criminally underpaid.
Yes.
So, it's only hamstringing them in the sense that the guilt and the media flack of getting rid of them would take. And if it would turn ugly, I think if it turns ugly with Letang, I think some people can deal with it. I think if it turns ugly with Gino, I think a lot of people can't deal with it. And I think if it would ever turn ugly with Sid, no one could deal with it.
No.
Or everyone, whatever I'm trying to say.
Sidney Crosby's beyond criticism at this point. He literally is. And he's earned that. He has. No, I agree with that. You know what I wonder, and unless one of them came out and said something publicly about it, it would be hard to know. I do wonder when I think about the big three, about conversations those three had with Kyle Dubas before last season, after last season, during the season, whatever, just about the direction of the team and what he told them. And if they feel like they were misled at all of a sudden we're going to rebuild, if they felt like we were just going to keep trying to win 100% and not worry about the future year after year, if that's the case, maybe they have a gripe. Maybe they can be upset with him. I'm not suggesting that they are, but they're not dumb. They have to know how far away they are because those three guys have won the cup 3 times. They know what it takes. They know how good you have to be, and they know they're not close.
They know it. They know it. So they step in the playoffs. But I will say this though: this is the first year when I don't believe. Like last year, you could think. Al said, we're going to try our best. We're going to go for it. And, they couldn't have thought the power play would have been horrendous. No. They couldn't have thought the goaltending would be horrendous. It's like a lot of things conspired against them. Like, all in all, I don't think Gino didn't have a great season, but he was pretty good. Letang was good until the very end. And Sid, if they would have won 3 more games, probably would have been in the MVP race. So
absolutely. No, you're right. But I do
thought Raquel would stink. I never thought Raquel could stink.
No, me neither. Something does feel different now all of a sudden, though, doesn't it? Because you're right. Even last year when the Penguins made that run in March and April, like I was literally thinking to myself, a couple of days before the season ended, if they get in, like that's the team the Rangers don't want to see. Like the Rangers want the Capitals or the Islanders. They don't want the Penguins. So yeah, and I don't know if that is me being blinded by what I've seen from this team in the past a little bit, and maybe just not realizing they're just not capable of that anymore. Or who knows? Maybe when they get hot, there's just something a little different about them. We saw it in 22 when they should have beaten the Rangers in the first round. Who knows? That team was playing at a really high level all of a sudden. So it's always in the back of your mind. If they just get hot, they still have all these players, but it certainly feels different right now. And it certainly feels like they're finally going to start relying on younger players. And as we know, when that happens, there's usually a lull when, things aren't going to go well for a little while. Maybe it won't be long. But this season, it's hard to feel super optimistic about them making the playoffs as their roster currently sits.
Exactly, because even like last year, like when they just went and steamrolled, Colorado for 2 periods,
right.
There was just times when they looked invincible, but they also had Jake on that team.
Yeah, they did.
That's the big law. I mean, that's I know it had to happen, and I'm not going to cry like half the city did for 3 months. But I mean, he's a big he cost Steven Stamkos' captaincy. He's a good player.
No, of course he is. He's a wonderful player, and the Penguins have always had that star power. And the fact is, he's gone. We know Malkin is starting to show visible signs of decline. We know Letang wasn't very good in the last month or two. And we also know Karlsson, while he did some great things, he didn't really play at the level last season that I think we were expecting from him. So all of a sudden, there's chinks in the armor of this star power. And we know that depth and, frankly, playing defense and goaltending has never really been a strength of these Penguins. So you add it all up, and it just feels like a lot of things have to go right next year, especially when the Rangers and Carolina are still going to be pretty good. New Jersey might be really good. The division all of a sudden looks like a bear.
I thought the Capitals a great week working on that next day. We can talk just a little bit more about the break. I think the 2 biggest keys of what he did right now, I think they could make us go from, to like, okay, we're in the mix. We're around, maybe, we're around trade deadline, we're in the mix. I think if Hayes can have a bit of a bounce back. If Hayes can give us, 18 to 22 goals,
he can be a legitimate third line center.
Nice killer. I think that would go a long way. And I think if Grzelcyk is Grzelcyk from 2 to 3 years ago and plays a good 20 minutes with Letang and really backs him up and lets Letang just have a nice easy season as far as not having to do too much, I think that can go a long way for us.
No question. And listen, you do have a new coach in David Quinn. Clearly, they're going to try some new stuff on the power play. They have to. It can't be worse than it was. That's if you're looking for optimism with the Penguins next season. What I'm always going to say is, remember this: their power play was historically bad last season, and they still almost made the playoffs. If it was even average, they are comfortably in the playoffs. So if they can fix that power play, maybe they'll be better than we give them credit for, because it's not like there aren't still really good pieces in this lineup. But as we know, the power play, fixing it, even though there's a lot of talent there, is no small order given what we saw last year.
I think we're going with the marketing team there again, Josh, for the Penguins. It couldn't be any worse. Can't get any worse. I wanted to ask you, Josh. I mean, we all think that Sid is a foregone conclusion. He's going to sign. But we're sitting here recording this on Sunday, July 7th, and it still hasn't happened. I'm not getting antsy yet, but I've seen people on Penguins Twitter certainly getting antsy about it. Do you know anything, any inside information on what's going on with Sid, and are they close to inking an extension?
I think it is still a foregone conclusion that he is going to sign at some point this summer. Is he thrilled with the direction of the team? I don't know. I haven't spoken with him in a little while. And even if he weren't thrilled with the direction of the team, I doubt he would come out and say it. It's conceivable that he's not, but I am of the belief that he has no interest in playing anywhere else. And he's literally spent more than half of his life as a Pittsburgh Penguin. He was still 17 when he was drafted. He's going to be 37 in a few weeks. Do the math, right? And I just think he is so comfortable here and so proud of everything this organization has accomplished. I don't see him leaving at all. I know there's always going to be whispers, and the longer he goes without signing, There's going to be articles written in Canada every day, like, oh, maybe Sid wants to be a Maple Leaf, maybe Sid wants to play with the Canadians, maybe seriously, there's an obsession with him up there. I understand it. And did you see the pep talk he gave the soccer team the other day? Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Team Canada had a big game in Dallas, I think it was, and Sid made his way down and gave a pep talk, and they were big underdogs, and they pulled off the biggest win in Canadian soccer history. The guy's got magic about him; it's unbelievable. But he's going to sign. Until I hear otherwise, I do not believe for a second that he would ever not sign.
Oh, before we wrap up the Penguin segment, I do have a question to ask. What do you know, and do you think Sully would ever play? The Ugandan Nightmare. Our new goon. I can't pronounce his name, so
I can't either.
The Nigerian Nightmare. It said the Twitter, the clickbait was Penguins sign NHL enforcer. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh, this dude. I'm skating around a couple times.
Yeah, I don't think he can play much. My inclination is no. Sully doesn't really like playing those guys.
He doesn't play ones that are good.
No, I mean, even like you look at Ryan Reeves, who's I don't really consider Reeves a goon. He can be an effective fourth line guy in a limited role. He scares people on the forecheck. He's just so big and strong and physical. Sully didn't want to play him. Sully just wants four lines of guys who can skate. So my guess would be no, probably not. But trust me, I hope it happens. I enjoy a good fight every now and then, and I would like to see it.
Well, yeah, to me it sounded like they need a guy down in Wilkes-Barre to clean clocks. That's what it seemed like. They always have you have to always have a couple on the farm.
This is true. No, they usually do. Usually the lower levels of hockey that you see more and more fighting and more tough customers. So hopefully we will see more of that.
Yeah, you got to protect those young fast guys that we hope will be up here soon. Before we wrap up this segment, I do is there any chance that they would put people on the fast track to the NHL? Because it's really frustrating. I love the NFL. You draft them, you might as well just put them in. And the MLB, it's like you draft them, and it's like 7 years later you find them. Is there anyone that's we just drafted, or maybe in the last year or so that might make is Jaeger going to maybe make an impact this season? Any chance? I mean, I'm looking for anything. I'm looking for optimism somewhere.
It's unlikely, honestly, that we will see that. But Jaeger's the guy. I guarantee people will be talking about him in September. Just watching him in prospect camp yesterday, watching him last year a little bit. This kid can shoot the puck. I mean, he is a natural goal scorer, and I know he's a natural center, but he can play right wing. And I have had scouts tell me, even though he's the guy who will probably replace Malkin as the second line center in a couple of years, he could shift over to the right wing and play with one of those guys right now. And just if you limit his responsibility and just let him focus on scoring goals, the way he can skate and shoot the puck, I really think he's going to be a very good NHL player, perhaps an impactful one. That said, he's still 19 years old, and I think it's unlikely that we will see him, but it will be interesting. If he has a great preseason, scores a few goals in the preseason, has a great training camp, the Penguins will have a very interesting decision on their hands, and I'd love to see it. I don't remember the last time I got to write about a prospect who made a difference with the Penguins. Probably Jake Gensel, honestly. So I'd love to see it. Just from what I've seen of him, guys, the talent is real. This kid can flat out score goals. So it's a matter of time before we see him at the NHL level.
I'll keep going. Just I'll talk Penguins forever. Was Aho and Grizz is an upgrade.
Yeah.
Aho, was Aho needed? Is he going to stand in somebody's way that, can Jack St. Ivany play? Do we need
Well, remember, Aho's left-handed, so he's going to play on the left side more. It's just a depth signing. I don't know that it was necessary. He's okay.
Right.
He's just kind of a guy, right? I still think St. Ivany on the right side. I think the plan right now is to go Carlson, Letang, St. Ivany on the right side. Don't know that for a fact, but that's my sense. And I can tell you St. Ivany really opened some eyes last season. Of course, Ryan Shake is back as well. So they can always throw that pairing back out there. Listen, they didn't play a fancy, spectacular game But if you want a reliable third pairing, that's exactly what they were. And St. Ivany in particular, he's a big kid. Like he plays with a little bit of an edge. I really like his game. I think he'll be the guy. As for the left side, for that, third pairing spot, you've got so many guys, Aho and Shea and Ludwig, and I guess we have to throw Ryan Graves in there.
I'm going to say Graves.
He's still on the team, right?
Yeah,
so
Graves.
it's quite a competition.
I don't know that like the 775,000 could have been an extra 775,000 to
Vlad
instead of
Tarasenko.
get Lazat, get somebody. That's all I'm saying.
I know.
We really need. I guess this is not anymore a cap. I guess it's a Puckpedia question. Are we at the cap? What is our situation?
No, they've got $2 or $3 million to spend. I think.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in one more guy. But Dubas also said, and Ray Shero used to do this all the time too, that he likes to leave a little bit of room open if you want to make a trade when the season starts, which makes sense. So there's a chance they could hand out another 1 year, $1.5 million deal to somebody. They have the flexibility to do that if they wish. But we knew they weren't going to make splashes to begin with, and they certainly have not.
You can dare to dream.
Well, yeah, it was underwhelming to say the least. Honestly, in the Sid era, this is the lamest free agency we've had. I mean, I've been on vacation, sitting there listening to, on my phone, listening to like local radio, trying to hear like what's happening, as far as I can remember, in my adult life, and here we are. I was like, when I saw Sebastian Aho, I was like, what? And then it quickly fizzled. So yeah, it was an interesting one. But yeah, well, that'll do it for the first segment here of Two for Talking. On the second segment, we'll talk NHL in general. A lot of former Penguins moved around. A lot of big names went to new places. So we'll talk about that and more on the second segment of Two for Talking. Welcome back to the second segment of Two for Talking. And, there's a lot of movement in the NHL free agency world. A lot of names went to a lot of different places. And we saw Mr. Jake Gensel move to not to Carolina, not staying in Carolina, not any of the other places. At the last minute, kind of out of nowhere, in my opinion. But Josh, you nailed it last week. The Tampa Bay Lightning, and boy, did they open up the checkbook for him. Yeah,
they really did. I certainly wasn't expecting them to be a player for Jake all along, but then they opened up all that money for him, and with a number of trades during the draft, which were rather unexpected at the time. And it became pretty evident that was their guy. And they certainly paid a price for him. First of all, good for Jake. He's one of my favorite people ever to deal with in a Penguins uniform, a great all-time Penguin. And he is now a very, very, very wealthy man, as if he wasn't before. That's not just $9 million a year. That's $9 million a year living in Florida. So he's avoiding a lot of taxes. He's making out very nicely. And he's going to put up numbers there, Joe. If he's on a line with Kucherov on a power play with Kuch, like when I think of Jake Gensel and Kucherov, I think of guys who don't necessarily blow you away with their physical attributes, but they both have hockey IQs that are way, way off the charts. And those two playing together, I don't know how good Tampa is going to be moving forward. I kind of still think their window is closed, but I promise you Jake's going to put up his numbers there.
Well, I'm happy for Jake getting his $9 million a year. Good for him. I'm a little sad for Jake, though. I'm a little worried for Jake. Because I know that Jake is going to put up a ton of points on it was going to be the best line in hockey, playing with Cooch and playing with Braden Point. Yes. And he's going to go and he's moving his office into the old office of the captain, Steven Stamkos. And other than Sidney Crosby, there may not be anyone playing right now that's more associated with winning in one team than Steven Stamkos. And Steven Stamkos is a gentleman and a legend. And he was taking shots off the melon in the playoffs this year. And I still think Florida was the toughest team. I thought that they were the toughest team. Edmonton came back, but for the first 4 or 5 games, I thought it was their toughest challenge. I'm bewildered. I feel bad for if they just would have said, Steve, we're moving on. That's fine. But the insulting offer that they gave him. It was insulting. I don't want to say why you listen on podcast. I went off for 20 minutes, and then Picaro was trying to say, "Well, it would have been 24. It was 24. Yeah, he didn't want to play 8 more years. He wants to play 2 more years.
Right?
It was an 8-year deal for $3 million a year. When Point and Hedman are on the beach, he's gonna be trying to make his $3 million bucks. Get out of here. It was an absolute. It was really, it was like they didn't even want to give him the 6. Just so it looked okay, just in case he would have took it. So they made it 3. That's what they really didn't want him back. I can't even believe it.
It's not like the guy still can't play. That's
was
the thing.
Great this year.
Yeah.
He was great this year.
He's still a 40-goal guy. I don't get it either. And you're right, Jake. If Jake does struggle there at all, he's going to be hearing it because he's the guy who replaced Stamkos financially, essentially. Even though they're different style players. I don't understand it either. And I love Jake. It's not that you wouldn't want to have him, but Stamkos is a living legend in Tampa. And it's not just that he's a Hall of Famer because of all the goals he scores. Okay. But he is a great leader. He is a great captain. He is one of the classiest people in professional sports. And I'm glad you mentioned in the playoffs last year that some of the stuff he did, like the way he would sacrifice his body. I'll take you back, Joe, to 2016 when he played in Game 7 against the Penguins. He had no business playing in that game, and he hadn't played all postseason. He showed up in Game 7 all of a sudden and played really well. But that's all I needed to know about Steven Stamkos. And
how about Stamkos' shift in the bubble? He played one shift and scored a goal, and he couldn't walk.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this guy, it's incredible, and for them to apparently not be that interested in him finishing his career in Tampa, especially, it's not like he scored 7 goals last year. The guy's still a great elite goal scorer.
Yeah, he's 40.
Right. And right, like you said, he wasn't asking for some 7-year contract. It baffles me that they would have treated him in that way. And you got to be careful because there are teams around the league or players around the league, rather, when they see that. When they see a team treat a guy like that, they will be tentative to want to play there. I'm telling you, it does happen. That's a real thing. And Stamkos is one of the most respected people in hockey. It was strange. It still is.
No offense to Marc-Andre Fleury. Everyone loves the Flower. We all got our panties in the bunch the way Vegas treated him.
Right.
He was nothing to Vegas compared to what Steven Stamkos is to Tampa.
Right. No, I mean, he was a big deal in Vegas, right? But he didn't win 2 cups there and wasn't there for 15 years. I mean,
he was their captain,
right? I mean, that's absolutely fair. And I was just blown away because honestly, when they made those moves to clear the space, I'm thinking, oh, they're going to bring Stamkos back. That's why they're doing it. And then I talked with a couple of people. It's like, I think he's gone. And then I found out they really had their eyes set on Jake. I'm like, oh. Okay, I love Jake too, but man, that's a very interesting decision.
I feel like it doesn't make them in there.
And then, how about Barry Trotz? Right, Barry Trotz steals him. He steals Marcia's shot from Vegas. I thought he gave Brady Shea. I like Brady Shea when he was a Ranger. I think he gave him way too much money, but that's beside the point because David Poile. He's the GM Kevin Lowe, who's now in the Hall of Fame. Like, who put him in? Like, literally, now there's someone worse than Kevin Lowe in the Hall of Fame. His name's David Poile. How the hell is David Poile is in the Hall of Fame? So first, Trotz is there 3 days. He made better moves in 3 hours than Poile did in 30 years.
And now all of a sudden, the Western Conference, we know how good it is. Okay. You've got Edmonton, Colorado, Dallas, all these heavyweights out there. Nashville's going to be an interesting team.
Oh, they're going to be awesome. And they signed Saros. I don't know what the kid in Milwaukee is going to do because they signed the backup too.
Saros is really good.
I was hoping I'm not. I mean, why is not Toronto going for Saros? I mean, I would martyr for Saros for Christ's sake. But he got it for 8 years. I forget who they got for the backup now because then the kid is going to be staying there. I can't read my notes now. They signed Wedgwood to back up. Right. Wedge with the backup. So the rookie's going to be
Fine.
staying in Milwaukee. But the whole thing with Nash, people were saying this is the Barry Trotz hasn't worked with that in Canada because all the Canadians that like go down to Nashville getting drunk and walking on Broadway, right? They
That's
forget
right.
history. They literally or how much they dismiss Russia, right? They go, Barry Trotz has never worked with that much talent before. What? What? Excuse me? Alexander Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Nick Backstrom,
John Carlson. Yeah, he had a little bit of talent. A little bit of talent there.
Excuse me.
I know. That's not true. But I will say this for Nashville specifically, it's always been a good franchise. They typically, field a competitive team, right? They've never really been fun to watch.
No.
They've never had that kind of star power. Yossi's great, but I think with Stamkos and even Marchessault, still a really good player. They have some name recognition now that they haven't had. Maybe we'll play a higher scoring brand of hockey. They're a really interesting team in the West. There are 7 or 8 teams in the West. You look at their rosters like, man, this is a good team. And Nashville really had that great second half last season, got into the playoffs. They certainly look like a playoff team to me. And I thought they got a good deal for Stamkos and Marchessault. Really, I thought those two guys both could have gone for perhaps more on the open market, but they wanted to play there. And no, they're good for the Predators. I applaud what they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of I think Colorado, I think Dallas. Winnipeg's going to not stink, but they're going down. But I thought Colorado and Dallas kind of stayed even in the Central. But I think Chicago and then Utah, they opened up the checkbook. They're going to be a tough team out there.
They'll be better.
In Chicago now, they have some NHL players. They put some guys around Bedard now. Like they're not going to be an easy out.
No, I mean they're on LA, still a solid team. I mean they're the Western Conference. Man, there are not many easy nights when you're playing in the West against them. Maybe San Jose and Anaheim will still be pretty bad, but off the top of my head, that's about it. Because I do think Chicago will certainly not be a playoff team, but I don't think they'll be as bad as they were last year. And also consider Chicago, Bedard. Usually the great players take a big leap from year 1 to year 2. And we saw it with Sid. We've seen it with a lot of great players over the years. Don't be shocked if he does too.
I love what my mistress did, except for trading Grunstrom from San Jose. I wouldn't the Penguins to look at Grunstrom. Yeah. I think he's a tough as nails kind of fourth line guy. Gets in there, he has some hands. But they got Fogle on the cheap 3. That's what I mean. Like Fogle went for 3.5.
I love him.
3 years. I mean, Lazat. I mean, come on now. But they got Edmondson. And they got Jeannot. They signed Edmondson to a decent deal. It's 4 years, but I mean, he's slow. Who cares? He's only around for the playoffs.
Right.
And then Tanner Jeannot is going to have a bounce back somewhere. So let it be with my mistress. The one crazy thing that happened way out west in Pacific Northwest is Ronnie Francis. What was did he hit the number? He's spending money he didn't have. He gave Montour 7 for 7 and change. Chandler Stevenson. That would have been the craziest one. Like 7 years, 6.25. 6.25 Chandler Stevenson.
I love Ronnie Francis. They've made some very questionable decisions. They really took a drop last year in the standings after being a playoff team the year before. That's way too much money for Stevenson. And I think Montour, I knew somebody was going to overpay him. I don't know how good he is. He's okay. I mean, I'd like to have him on my team, sure. Is he a 7-year, $50 million player? He sure didn't look like it in the playoffs to me. I'm not buying it. I thought that was very bizarre when I saw that number.
Especially for Ronnie, who never really takes big swings. I mean, he didn't even have a goal scorer for 3 years.
Right.
He's not a guy taking big swings. For him to take that, but I'll tell you, our old buddy JR, I thought he had a great summer. Yes. Tyler Myers 3x3. They got the forward, but they got DeBrusque. 5.5. That's great for DeBrusque.
They brought back Dakota Joshua, which I think is a really important piece for their bottom 6 as well. So,
how did Dakota Joshua only go? That's what I'm saying. 3.25 times 4. Come on, Kyle.
No, I
mean,
mean
he's worth 4 times 4. Come on, he's worth 5 times 4. He's a kid.
yeah,
You know,
no,
he's not a puppy, but he can
I
still
agree
play
with you.
outside all day.
I agree with you. He's a guy I really liked. I love Vancouver summer, and they keep having. It's like they're in cap trouble every year, but then they find ways to kind of get out of it and make all these deals. Lindholm didn't really play great there; didn't work out, so let him walk. But I still think Vancouver is very clearly a playoff team, and I like what they did as well.
Yeah, fabulous. I guess we should talk about then back east. I think a lot of teams. I think the Rangers good riddance. You can have Riley. I'm surprised. With Trouba. He could hit Sid in the head 10 more times, and I'd still have more respect for him than I have that he can't go to Detroit because his wife's in medical school. What? There's not medical. First of all. Why should she go to school? She's married to an NHL hockey player. She needs a say. You see a side hustle. She needs to say your wife needs to work, Trouba. And then there's not medical hospitals in Detroit. I'm sure you can learn how to stitch up gunshots.
That's
working in Detroit.
Oh yeah, that's what doesn't make sense. Like you couldn't be in that field anywhere. That's true. So I don't know, and who knows what's true and what isn't when it comes to that.
Josh, just don't throw your wife under the bus. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
I don't care how many cheap shots. I don't care how many cheap shots you give someone. I never use my wife as an excuse not to do something.
No, that's
just
fair
not the
point.
way you do. That's just not what men do.
That's right. I do think it's interesting that the Rangers have pretty much looked in the mirror and said, "Boy, this guy's a problem. He was responsible for about half of our goals against in the playoffs. Maybe we should get rid of him." So it's interesting that they've clearly made that decision. I don't know who wants him. Boy, he makes a lot of money for what he is. He's not a bad player, but he is hardly some shutdown defenseman. He is absolutely not that. So I think the Rangers, I think that window of theirs might be starting to close. That team's older than people realize. They'll still be good. They'll still be a playoff team. As long as they got the goaltender, they're going to be a playoff team, I think. But they have a lot more people on the wrong side of 30 than you might think.
Yeah, and I love Kreider. He did an off year. But let's face it, Breadman hasn't done it in the playoffs in a long time.
Right.
Zibanejad hasn't done it in the playoffs in a long time. Like we said, if Trocheck's your best player, you're not going to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, he's a great guy and a great player, but he's got to be the 5th or 4th best forward on your team.
Yeah, Trocheck's he's a great second line center. That's what he is. There's no shame in that. He was great in the playoffs. But yeah, you're right. Some of their big names really did not have a great postseason, especially, of course, against Florida. So
Fox, they're the defensive. The team that scares me, well, first of all, Jersey, what they did was perfect.
Oh yeah,
Pesci, great for 5.5. That's a steal. And I'm not the biggest Dylan fan, but he's a ball buster. And we want him on your team, and that's why I don't like him, because I respect him. It's not going to be fun playing him, 6 times a year or 5 times a year.
No.
But that, and I thought Washington could possibly take a step back. They are not at all. I like that Duhaime kid. Roy's a pretty good defenseman. I mean, he's way better. I mean, Pesci's way better than him. But they gave him 6 years. But I'll tell you, Mangiapane can play. He can bury the puck. He's going to get chances on that team. Mangiapane is a goal scorer. And Logan Thompson's a good goaltender. So I think
I like what
I thought Washington was going to go down. I thought the arrow was down. I don't feel that way anymore.
No, I think they are doing what the Penguins need to do in the next couple of years. Washington has done a great job of really identifying some young players who can help them now and into the future, who aren't making too much money. The biggest problem Washington is probably going to have is that their most recognizable player is just not even close to what he once was. We certainly, if we needed any more proof in the playoffs, Ovechkin struggled to the point that, he's just not the same guy anymore. But you still have to bring in young players, and that's exactly what they're doing. So I think the Capitals are providing a little bit of a blueprint for what the Penguins should do in the next 12 to 24 months. And I'm telling you, the Devils, that's a scary team. You're looking for a bounce back candidate next season. I guarantee you the Devils are a playoff team.
Oh, I have the Devils in the playoffs. They're easily a playoff team. That's a question.
They could be a cup.
They got Markstrom, for Christ's sake.
Right. They could be a cup contender next season, and I would not be surprised at all. I really, really like their roster, and in particular for the Penguins, that's a team that is just built to give them trouble. We've seen it the last couple of years. The Devils have skated circles around the Penguins on many a night.
In the Atlantic, I think Florida, they lost some guys. They lost their fourth line. They lost their fourth, and I love those guys. I love Stenlund, and I love the kid that went to Calgary for only $2 million a year. By the way, they kept Reinhart at under 9, and they're going to do okay. We talked about Tampa, what they did. They got Gergensen, who's an a-hole. But I'll tell you, Boston, they're never going to go away.
I know.
I'm not the biggest Lindholm guy, but he's pretty good.
He'll fit in there too. Yeah.
They gave him too much money, too long a time, but they got Zadorov for only $5 million a year. I can't believe no one outbid Boston for $5 million a year.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. Now my first thought when I heard all the moves they made, like, yeah, they're going to be good again. Like they have a way about them. They're a well-oiled machine of an organization. Like, what's going on in Buffalo? What are the Sabres doing? Like, I keep waiting for them to like take a jump. But they just, I don't know. Like, I feel like
Zucker. How on what planet is Zucker more valuable than Dakota Joshua?
Right, and I like Jason, but it was a strange move. And Buffalo's got some young talent on the blue line, especially. You just keep waiting for them to make a couple of moves and add some pieces. The good people of Northwestern New York must be going crazy with that team. They still show up every night. The Sabres still get great crowds. It's a great hockey town, one of the best in the league. They're just stuck in neutral. And same with the Ottawa Senators for that matter. The Senators are one of those teams. They fooled me last season. I thought they could be a playoff team. They actually have some talent, but I don't know. I feel like that division, the best teams last season are probably still the best teams this season.
Again, and my boy Frazier, now he thought the Pens were getting Vlad. He was happy for me. Then, but you got Vlad. He's like, whoa. But then he got Jack Campbell too. Like he's supposed to get. He's been yearning for Gibby for 5 years. I thought this would have been the summer. It didn't happen. The Toronto Maple Leafs, Domi. Domi needs a better agent too. 375 times 4. What is he sleeping at his dad's house? He didn't have to buy a house. Like
he was pretty
Toronto,
good.
That with the communism up there, that's nothing.
No, it's not.
He's playing for free.
Yeah, he's going to live in a studio apartment living in Toronto on that kind of money. I agree with you. You keep waiting for the Leafs to do something to shake up that roster. We all thought it was coming. It has not yet. We will see if something else happens during the summer. I think they're probably going to do something. It'd be kind of crazy to bring back that same group, in my opinion. We shall see. And Domi's a guy I've always liked. I thought he may have gotten a little more than that, but who knows? There will still be some moves made between now and training camp. We know that much.
Well, one thing they did do was they not completely. They shored up their defense by a ton.
They did.
They got OEL, Oliver Ekman Larson, 4 times 3.5. Maybe a little too long, 3.5. He had a great playoff. He earned his keep on the playoffs, and that's when we know what they need him for. And they got their guy. They got Tanev 6 years. I'm sure he'll only play 3, so maybe he'll get allergic to his equipment or something. 4 or 5. But the interesting thing, the one that got me though, was who I like, that Hakanpää guy. He when he's healthy in Dallas, that's a big if. He's a big guy. He moves the puck and he hits the hell out of people.
No, I like him
he's
too.
He's only 1.5 a year for 2. I thought that gives them. They needed 3 defensemen. They got 3 defensemen.
No, they did. No, their blue line's better. Tanev is a guy I love. I mean, listen, I'll take that guy in a playoff series anytime. He's going to help you win. 6 years is way too long, especially with the way he plays. His brother got a 6-year deal once upon a time from the Penguins. I guess the Tanev brothers know how to get 6-year deals in free agency. So, yeah, I mean, the Leafs, in theory, could be better. Or should be better. I still have issues with their lack of depth up front and their goaltending. And frankly,
they're going into goaltending, Josh. They have Mr. Woll,
Mm,
Stoley the
yeah.
goalie, and our old friend Matt Murray. So
Yeah, how about that? And
it's question mark, and bigger
Yeah.
question mark.
I'm glad you mentioned Matt, though, because I really have a lot of respect for him. And I know the surgery he had, his hip injury, there is not a worse injury for a goaltender than a hip injury. And he's been dealing with hip issues for a long time. I don't know if we'll ever see him in the NHL again, but he's obviously going to try. And I certainly wish him nothing but good luck. And he's still a young guy. It'd be nice to see him find something close to the form that he once had.
I love Muzz. He gave me 2 cups. Incredible stuff. Incredible human. He loves dogs. I love everything about Muzz. And let me tell you something, Josh. It's Woll and Stoley. He's going to be playing this year in the NHL.
Yeah, as long as he can walk.
If Muzz is healthy, those guys are going to miss games for either injury or because they're batting 790 over 5.
Yeah, that's the Leafs trouble. It's the Leafs, so they'll make things interesting for sure. But yeah, so I don't know. There's all kinds of interesting teams. I don't necessarily love what Detroit did. I keep waiting for Yzerman to make more of a mark on that team, and they're okay. But I don't know that I like all the moves that he's made there, quite honestly. So
no, I know Frage didn't.
Yeah.
But Vlad wipes a lot of anger, a lot of mistakes. Their goaltending isn't solved yet. Oh, the big one too is they got Sugarcane back. That was a big one for him. So Patty is $4 million 1 year. Patty played good for them when he was healthy. I think losing Perron's going to hurt. Perron's a gamer.
Oh man,
why the hell did he pick Ottawa? Is his mother-in-law live there? I mean, who the hell would pick Ottawa?
It's close to Montreal. Maybe that's all I can think of. But what's one thing that's really interesting to me? You mentioned Patty Kane. He proved last season he can still play. Okay, he was really good.
Yeah.
If you're Chicago, you have all this money to spend. You really need a playmaking winger to play with Bedard, who's a natural goal scorer. I don't understand why they don't want him back. And I've talked with people who cover the Blackhawks, and they have pretty much said, listen, the Blackhawks have made a decision. We're going young. We don't want to bring any of the old guys back. And I understand that. But if Kane's willing to sign a 1 or 2 year deal, why wouldn't you want him to finish his career in Chicago and let him play with Bedard? It doesn't make sense to me.
You know me and nostalgia for great players. I love every second of it. But I think it's this point, it's a great segue for me because I want to welcome back to the NHL the great Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman. It's about time, fellas. If you want to hear what I think, I have a world famous actor who did my podcast a couple months ago, Puck Off, and he says what I really think, but I'm not going to say it because I want to stay employed in different places. But he he said it was very, very interesting. You can check it out. You can figure it out. But that being said, I think they just don't want anything to do with that regime at all. And that's why they're not going to bring Kane back, which is good news for Frazier. Because it makes no sense not to bring him back.
I understand, nostalgia acts don't always work. In fact, they usually don't. Personally, I don't see the risk in having Kane on that team for a year or two. I think I was surprised with how good he still was last season. In fact, one of my favorite moments from the NHL season last year was when Kane, his first game back in Chicago, he wins the game in overtime on a breakaway. That was just an unbelievable moment. He's a legend in Chicago. He can still play. And I think Kane has certainly grown up a lot over the years. And I think he's probably familiar with some of the stuff Bedard is going through right now. I don't think it would be a bad thing to have him around him on a personal level either. So I think Chicago's really missing the boat on that.
I agree with everything you said. I'm just wondering. I just think they don't want to bring that regime back.
I guess I get it, but
it does it take? Are they almost overthinking it, where they're just trying to make Bedard such a star that you don't want to bring someone in? You want your co-star to have that much juice. Does that make any sense to you, John?
It does. And I
not
get
on
that.
the ice, just off the ice.
I get it. And there is something to be said for that for sure. But they lucked into getting Bedard, but I wonder about just the people running that organization. I don't know. I have I have some questions about that franchise moving forward. I'm just talking the on ice product. I think they have a long, long way to go. Whereas with the Penguins and Sid's second year, they were already a playoff team. You're not going to see that with Bedard in his second year in Chicago.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the off ice product. Is they literally whatever Corey Perry did, obviously wasn't a capital offense.
Right.
They couldn't have wasted an asset worse.
No.
You can say, Corey, go to Bermuda for 2 weeks. We'll say you have a strained groin, and we'll get a second round pick for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah, the lack of transparency on that one really killed them. And I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. I think they're now a paranoid franchise, and for good reason. I get it. But you still have to make smart hockey decisions. And I don't know. I just think they have made one mistake after another. And boy, where would they be if they didn't get Connor Bedard? My goodness, would they be in a world of hurt?
Yep. And people will crucify me for this, but and my nephew kind of looked at me sideways when I brought it up to him. But I said, Bedard is good, but he's not like Sid Ovechkin level. Like that's a McDavid. I mean, and my nephew was like, oh no. And I said, look at his stats. Like he was, he was less than a point a game his rookie year. Like I know, it doesn't have to be a point a game player right off the bat.
I kind of fall in line with you there, Corey. I think, and listen, he's 18, so we need to give him time.
Yeah.
But he's clearly a star. But you can be a star and still not be McDavid or Crosby or Ovechkin. And we'll say you got to be an all-time superstar to get into the conversation with those three. And I don't know that he ever will, even though I think he's clearly somebody you can build a team around. He might be more of a Stamkos type. That's okay. There's, of course, nothing wrong with that. But for all the people I heard comparing him to those big guys from the very beginning, like, be careful with that. Those are three of the 10 greatest players of all time you're talking about.
He's a little slight, but who was slight was that Elias Pettersson was slight. I remember people in Vancouver complaining people hit him too hard. Like, it's not a rough if it's a clean check and the guy only weighs 140 pounds.
Oh, Patrick Kane's not a big guy either. He's built like that, and he's been fine. So no, I bet Bedard's a star. There's no question. I'm not putting him down in any way. I think he may have lived up to the hype, but even if he lived up to the hype in his first year, to be one of those guys, I'm not sure about that.
Well, I just feel like the NHL has done that a lot. Like, not the NHL, but maybe more the fans, where it's like every other year, the draft pick, it's like, this is the guy, like this is the next one. And I'm like, we saw it with Celebrini at the draft this year, and I see Sharks fans posting videos, at training camp, him making like a little backhand pass, and they're like, oh my God, and it's like, I mean, like,
Corey, let San Jose get excited about something.
That's true.
It ain't got to be a hater. No, but but in my lifetime, what has it really been? There's been 5. I'm 54, so what? There's been Mario, basically what? Mario, Lindros, Sid, Ovi, Jesus, Matthews to a lesser extent, Bedard. Well, Matthews lesser to an extent of Jesus, but pretty high up Matthews, and then Bedard. Really, those have been the big ones. But I think what stinks for them is for Chicago in general is Utah's not a bottom feeder. They stole Sergachev. They got Marino. They got Dursey, a little too much money. They got Stenlin. They got Cole. Like, they got defense now. Phoenix never had defense. Now they got a whole back blue line.
No, they might be. That team might be totally decent. And
they were in the playoff mix until like Valentine's Day. Then they just, their idiot owner, they all just went, wait a second, we might have to move to Utah, and they went like a 15-game losing streak.
Yeah, their owner is an all-time idiot. Well, former owner now.
Yeah.
No question. That team, I don't know that they're a playoff team, but they're not a bottom feeder anymore. And they got better last year, like you said. I like their blue line a lot. So that's what I mean when I talk about the Western Conference being as good as it is. Even the bad teams, like Chicago, will be better. Utah should be a lot better. So other than like San Jose and Anaheim, I guess, other than those two, man, the West is just going to be an absolute war. There are just not many teams in rebuild mode out there. They're all good.
I am going to take the train down to see our buddy Brian Dumoulin is now an Anaheim Duck.
Oh, poor
But I am
Dumo.
going to bring 3 sweatshirts because the coldest arena in the NHL is the duck pond. They keep it about -8. And it's very good because of the ice girls have pretty low cut shirts. I'll leave it at that.
I have noticed that the duck pond is really cold, and poor Dumo. Dumo is a wine connoisseur. If he had to go to any crappy California team, he'd much rather be in San Jose, not that far from wine country. So now he's buried in Anaheim. Poor Dumo. He has never been the same since he hurt his ankle in St. Louis in 2019.
I remember that hit too against the boards. It was
Behind the net.
nasty.
Yep. Never been the same guy since then. An all-time great Penguin, in my opinion.
All-time.
In his first 4 or 5 years, he was great. He really was. Never quite the same after that.
I really thought he was going to be the next captain. That was my prediction. Was before that injury. I thought, man, like he might be the captain after Sid. Like he might be around here for 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I thought he would be here a long time, but you know,
Yeah.
you could see it the last couple of years in Pittsburgh. He was really starting to struggle. It's hard to watch, and of course, the fans turn on him, and social media
Well,
turns on him.
I'm always the last one to turn.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's like the guy helped you win 2 cups. He got hurt. He's never been the same. It's not like he doesn't care. That always drives me nuts. But an all-time great Penguin.
If you help one of my teams win a championship, I will give you grace for a very long time.
Yeah, forever. That's what it should.
You do whatever you want. You know, it's like that's why Barry Bonds is such a perfect villain because he didn't win a championship. You know what I mean? Like Barry Bonds wins the World Series in 1991. We probably, all let him roll out the red carpet for him every time.
I never think of Bonds as a villain. You know who I think's a villain? Broussard.
Well, yeah. We're gonna have to have a Broussard tracker like through the season. We'll have like a ticker.
I mean, keep driving his beer like him and Winnick. Did we talk about this last week? Because Winnick retired too. The double dip, the 2 worst Penguins in Sid's era.
Daniel,
I'm not talking about call-ups. I mean, guys that were NHLers that came to us.
Oh, Broussard. You know what, Corey? Broussard for years has lived in LA in the off season. I wonder if he and Joe maybe had words at some point and we're not aware. Maybe Joe ran into Broussard in like August in LA one summer, and I don't know. Maybe like
Manhattan Beach and look for him. I was saying, hey, is there an overrated third line center in the house?
Well, don't call him that. He views himself as a top line center, so he'll get really pissed if you call him that.
If Joe's life was a movie, he'd be showing up on like the street corner, and across the street he'd see Broussard do like a double take and look at him and go, pointing at him like, "Are you the guy?"
This is so much fun. This is so much fun.
And I do want to close out just one thought that I wanted to throw out there. I want to get your guys' opinions. You're talking about the West being such a juggernaut right now. And kind of the conversation about that happened on the 4th of July with my family, and we're talking about it. And my nephew goes, who's 13, so he doesn't understand how hard it is to win a Stanley Cup yet. He saw the Penguins win it when he was 6 and 7, so he was like, "Oh, this is the easiest thing." And he's like, "But McDavid,
has he been listening to the big Irish drunk, our former president in charge of schmooze and booze, space on his name? Geez. Long weekend, he's not wearing it. He can't tie his tie. He's too important.
Oh yeah, Brian
Burke.
Brian Burke. Every job he loses, if there only one team gets to celebrate, it's never yours.
Yeah. Well, it
it was once. I know. He won
one time ago.
You'd think he'd won 10 the way he talks, the way he's treated.
This is true.
But the conversation of he said, "Oh, McDavid's gonna get one." And we kind of family around was like, I don't know. Like the West is really good. That might have been his chance. That might have been. I don't know. It's just I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on where they stand. Now that we're a couple weeks removed from the Cup ending, we see where players have landed in the West. Like you guys said, it's just a murderer's row out there, and I have a hard time seeing them repeating.
You mean will Connor McDavid win his Stanley Cup in Edmonton? I give it about a 30 to 40% chance. Will Connor McDavid win his Stanley Cup with any franchise in the NHL? I give it about a 60 to 70% chance.
That's a really good answer. That's a really good way to look at it.
That sounds about right. And what's interesting with them is Leon Draisaitl. Leon has 1 year left on his deal, and I don't know what's going to happen with Draisaitl. I don't cover the Oilers. I don't know the guy, but I have certainly spoken with enough people around the league who are, let's just say, not convinced he's going to stay in Edmonton long term. There is certainly some buzz that it is not a given that he's going to sign another deal there. And if that would be the case, that would change everything. And I do think McDavid will win a cup at some point. I don't know that he'll spend his entire career in Edmonton. I do think from a pure talent standpoint, he's one of the 4 or 5 best players we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And so I just think the odds are that, yes, he will at some point in the next decade be on a cup-winning team. But that said, he will be 28 years old in January. Mario won his last cup at 26. Gretzky won his last cup, I think, at 27. Like the all-time greats, Sid won his last at 29. Usually you do it in your 20s. It gets a lot harder in your 30s, like Ovechkin, finally did in his 30s. The longer you go, and then the pressure starts to build more and more and more. He might be thinking about that June evening in Florida in 2024 for a long time when they were that close and just couldn't finish the deal.
I have 2 points on what your statement. One is supposedly he has a place to stay near Gary Roberts in the summer, and him and Steven Stamkos are Roberts' 2 biggest clients in the summer. And if anyone has been taking care of himself, it looks like Steven Stamkos has. Yeah. So I think Jesus, barring anything horrible happening, which I hope does not. Mm-hmm. Obviously, and I mean, obviously, I love watching the guy play. I think he's going to play another 12 years.
Oh yeah.
But I love Leon. I thought 3 years ago in the playoffs, or whenever they went to I think the Western Conference Final, they at least won a round. I thought Leon played better than Jesus. Yeah. I love Leon, but I'm not quite sure Leon leaving might not be the best thing for that franchise as a whole. And kind of rely on a lot more different people instead of a big 2, have Jesus and then like 5 other senior officers. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking. I don't know. Maybe I just don't think putting $15 million into one player might be the way to do it nowadays.
Yeah, you might be right. And no, I didn't know that McDavid was working out with Gary Roberts, but I have been to the Gary Roberts gym in Toronto, and he has a lot of NHL players there, and they swear by him. And McDavid is from Toronto, lives there in the summer, so I guess it makes sense, and good for him if he is indeed working with him. He's going to be great for a long time. I don't think there's any questioning that. And as for Draisaitl, I always lump in, I was in Crosby and Malkin and McDavid and Draisaitl. It's an obvious comparison to make. Crosby and Malkin chose to stay in Pittsburgh forever. It would be fascinating if Draisaitl took a different route. Man, that would change things. Edmonton, I don't know. It wouldn't be my favorite city to live in. I don't know how Leon feels about it, but I'm sure he loves playing on that team. If you're an offensive-minded player like he is, heck yeah, you'd want to play with all of the talent that they have there. So just an interesting thing moving forward. That can really shift the balance of power, though, in the West if Draisaitl leaves.
Isn't it always Sid and Gino, right? And every other organization in the last 20 years has tried to come up with their Sid and Gino. Yeah. But I just think you got to go back to Sakic and Forsberg and Yzerman and Fedorov. And and I know Yager is a power forward and Ronnie's a real center, but in Mario and whoever, I mean, no one's come close to Sid and Gino because in a way, no one, you guys know, no one loves Gino more than me, but there's no one better than Sid. And that's just the bottom line. The bottom line, and Gino's played a great Batman for the last 20 years. So every team comes up, that's going to be our Sid and Gino. It never is.
No, it's not. And McDavid and Draisaitl from a talent standpoint and from a sheer number standpoint are in their class, but they haven't won anything. Draisaitl's almost 30. I think he's going to be 29. McDavid's going to be 28. So it's time. It's time for them to win something. And they came close. I'm aware of how close they came, but that pressure is going to keep mounting. And like we have kept repeating over and over again in the last hour, the Western Conference, Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver, Nashville now. I'm forgetting a couple of great teams. Like the West is just loaded. It's going to be a problem for Edmonton moving forward.
Well, we said this last week, Sid and Gino don't get blanked in game 6 and 7.
No.
Sid and Gino don't, with 5 minutes left when they're standing in front of the net, don't bury the puck. That's just the difference. And until those guys do it, they're just never going to be in that class. No. Stats are stats.
Well,
the
Conn Smythe voters disagree, but McKinnon buries that shot.
Yeah, no, he does.
I know what you mean. I do. As great as they are, that killer instinct, you never really sense it with those two. And I don't know. I know there are some people who would, that's not fair. But you know what? I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine, especially the way the schedule's set up. You get all those days off. They had to have been relatively rested. Well, they laid an egg in those last 2 games. So there's no other way to put it.
People were, I commented on Twitter about this, and people were like, well, they're exhausted. They were out there so much. But I'm sorry. That pass was a little ahead of Draisaitl at the end of the game, the very end, and that goes down into the corner. He didn't exactly, hustle to go get it. You watch it, he missed the pass, and he's like, and then I don't understand what the Oilers are doing. They have 6 players. There's 3 or 4 Panthers down there pinning the puck, and there's only 2 Oilers. And I'm like, and people were arguing with me like, well, you have to be in front of the net to get the shot. And I'm like, it doesn't matter until the puck is loose. Like, you got to win the Stanley Cup, Connor, what are you doing standing in the slot? Go get the puck.
You brought up the word schedule, Corey.
What's that?
I hate you brought up the word schedule. It looks like the league knows the Penguins aren't going to be very good because that's a piss poor schedule for a team. Well, they're they're on the road 10 of the first 12 games.
Yeah. How about the 7-game road trip in January? I don't remember the last time they had a road trip that long. 7 games.
That can be the dash.
Well, yeah, they usually come to LA in January, so I guess maybe there's just more teams. You know that more than me. Right. You have to fly out here, but now I guess they got to hit Utah. They got now. There's more. Seattle. I guess there's just more to pick from. But I thought they're trying to bury that team early.
Well, you know what I like about the schedule, Corey? They've got a game in LA on a Monday night when they play out there. Then they don't play in Anaheim until Thursday. So I got lots of time to hang out with Joe Bartnick in Los Angeles that week.
Oh, darn. I guess I should make a business trip too.
Bring your good camera, Corey. We can catch the yearly greased up top flight volleyball game. Top Gun montage.
I've got one kid that's been to the Cars Land in Anaheim there and one who hasn't. And so maybe that's the makeup. We're like, hey, might as well. Let's go watch some hockey. Go out to LA. It's a little bit more family friendly than Vegas, evidently. Like we talked last week. So.
Probably a little.
There's nothing family friendly about Vegas unless it's a mother-daughter strip team.
Yeah, but no, I agree. And I think 3 or 4, they play in 3 or 4 teams home openers. The Penguins do.
Yeah, no, it's literally just it's terrible. But
get them married early. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, let's do it. That'll do it we only got to 2 segments because free agency dominates. So we'll save the other stuff for summer programming. But we appreciate you guys for listening. If you want to reach out to the show, it's the number 2 for talking podcast at gmail.com, and we will talk to you guys later.